Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragnishantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu, Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asato ma Satkamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirma Edhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. Om. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us now and always. So we will begin today on verse number 6. Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve varteta atmaiva shatruvat. To him who has conquered the self, body and senses, by his self, the self is his friend. For the uncontrolled man, however, the self alone is adverse like an enemy. So in the last two verses that we saw when we concluded last week, we saw how we ourselves can be our friends and we ourselves can be our enemies. That our mind has already gotten divided, and there is a part of our mind which wants to hold on to certain ideals, and there is another part of the mind which has gotten habituated to do things which deviate from that ideal. And that's how we experience the stress in life. Oftentimes, the dilemmas that we experience come because of it. A part of our mind says, this is the ideal, this is what I must do. And then the other part says, no, 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 that's not what you should do. And that's how then we have this inner tug of war inside. And so what this verse points out is that when our mind becomes our friend, it then guides us like a friend to do the right thing. When a mind acts like our enemy, it misguides us as an enemy would, so that we do things which are against our own interest. And what this verse points out is that the one important requirement for the mind to become our own friend is control over oneself, mastery over oneself. Swami Vivekananda pointed out in that lecture that he gave at the Chicago Parliament that the body and mind are our instruments. We are the masters. The body and mind should do what we want them to do. On the other hand, if the body and mind have, I was about to say the mind has a mind of its own, which really it's pretty much that's what happened. We would like to do some things, but both the body and mind refuse to cooperate. And then, if in such situations, If it's the body and mind which win, then I'm no longer the master. They have become my masters. And I sometimes give you that example about if you're accustomed to drinking a cup of coffee, say, every morning at 7 o'clock, and you might say, well, this is a free country, I'm a free person, I want to go and have a cup of coffee, and I go and fix it. Appears to be a perfectly normal situation. But if you look deeply, am I really going and fixing that cup of coffee out of freedom? Or it's my body that's saying, coffee time, go. And then I go under the illusion that I'm doing it out of freedom, but it's my body that's ordering me to do so. Now, which doesn't mean I don't have anything, just because I keep on giving example about coffee, might seem I have something personal against coffee. I don't have, I enjoy coffee, but that doesn't also mean that you shouldn't drink a cup of coffee in the morning. That's not the point. The point is that to make sure that more and more of my actions are done out of freedom. The value of fasting as a discipline is enjoined in across religious traditions. So that is one of the many benefits of fasting. So again, to stick to that example of coffee, if you're used to drinking coffee every morning at 7 o'clock, and then you say, when it's my day to fast, I'm not going to drink coffee. So let's say your fasting day has arrived. It's 7 o'clock. The inner bell starts ringing. It's coffee time. And then that time you say, no, today I'm not going to do it. No matter how much the body or mind may demand it, you say no. Again, next day if you want, you can still drink coffee. But by this one day denying what your body had taken for granted, you are asserting your own mastery. You are telling the body, yes, I'm giving it to you, but I give it to you out of freedom. If you want to demand it, I can say no whenever I want to. So that's the idea. So a person who is able to exert that kind of control. Now, we may not have that kind of control 100% overnight. That's fine. But if we keep on making effort, and the more and more we are able to let our own body and mind know that I'm the boss, that you are only my instrument, to such a person, the mind becomes a friend. It becomes so much more easier then, for the mind then recognizes, I'd better be a good instrument. The body recognizes, I'd better be a good instrument, because if I'm not, I won't get my cup of coffee. It's like this. If you have in an office environment, in a workplace environment, if you have a strict boss, then the subordinates know that I can't take liberties. If I take liberties, then I've been the one who will suffer. But if you have the boss who doesn't care, or the boss who cannot control subordinates, then the work is going to suffer. So it's pretty much the same thing. This is a kind of a workplace also. All these are subordinates, all the senses, and you are the boss. So long as you keep all these under control, these things can do excellent work. If you don't keep it under control, then there will be chaos. So that is the idea. The one who has control, to such a person, the mind becomes a friend. And as a friend, the mind will guide me, do things which are in my interest. The self alone is adverse like an enemy. We will see that whenever we have suffered in life, very rarely will we find that in our suffering, we had no role to play whatsoever. That I did not contribute in any way, and yet I suffered. Sometimes it might happen, and then the only way to say is, well, that was just that was just a part I had no control over. But most of the time, we will find that I may not have been wholly responsible for my own suffering, but there is some way I may have contributed. I don't say it's always, I don't say it's never. I just say that we might find that in some direct or indirect way, my misjudgments, my wrong choices may have contributed to some of the pain that we experience in life. And those wrong choices, those misjudgments were made by my own mind. And why would my mind guide me or misguide me in this instance to do things which would bring me pain, unless my mind were not my friend? So that is what is meant here, that my own mind can act like my friend or act like my enemy. It all depends on how much control I have over my body and mind. To such a person who has that control, such a person then has attained to that state of yoga. That is what verse number 7 then emphasizes. Jitatmanah prashantasya paramatma samahitah shitoshna sukhadukheshu tatha manapamanayoho. The self of one who is self-controlled and serene is alone poised in heat and cold, happiness and misery, as also in honor and dishonor. Now, no life or no life's ride or a journey, if you like, is really straightforward. Every life, with no exception, goes through ups and downs. When we are young and when we have very rosy dreams about the future, it's sometimes we are naive in thinking that, well, my life is going to be so smooth, everything is going to be perfect. Yeah, sure, there is a lot of pain around, there is a lot of suffering around, it's too bad, but that's not something that's going to happen to me. And that's natural when we are very young, when we haven't come face to face with the harsh, cold reality of the world. We might think it's just going to be a smooth ride. But slowly, our own experience will teach us that there are going to be these ups and downs. And that's in the nature of life itself. What distinguishes one person from another person is not how many bumps I've had in my life or how many ups and downs I have had, but how I have faced these ups and downs, how I have managed to navigate my boat. It's like this, when you are going fishing, say, and deep into the seas, there are going to be waves, there are going to be storms. One option is not to go out at all, which as we have seen in the earlier verse, is not possible. You're already out there in the middle, so there is no choice not to go out. And so the only choice left to you is to deal with all these storms and waves, sometimes tsunamis, in a wise way. That's the only choice we have. And these waves and ups and downs are described here in terms of heat and cold, happiness and misery, honor and dishonor. In one form or other, not just these ones, these are just examples. These forms of ups and downs, or the polarities in life, the opposites. Well, we had a good summer, now we are getting ready for the winter. So those of us who live in New England are at least very familiar with this heat and cold. If we get a lot of, if we get upset a lot, if we get very perturbed by these changes in life or these ups and downs in life, then we won't be able to achieve anything. Forget about spiritual life. Even in our secular life, one who is always complaining, always upset, always angry, such a person can't achieve anything in life, because so much of our energy is just lost in just complaining and getting frustrated. We can conserve all that energy, but it's possible not to get frustrated, not to get angry, only if we are self-controlled and serene. The word serene, the Sanskrit, is called prashanta. Shanta is peaceful. Prashanta is kind of a deeper kind of peace. Now, a deeper kind of peace can come only if I can take heat and cold, happiness and misery, success and failure in my stride. If I'm not able to take it in my stride, then there is not going to be any peace. And if I'm not peaceful, then I'm not going to be able to do anything in life. I won't be able to focus on my work. I won't be able to carry out my responsibilities well. And if I cannot do well even in my day-to-day life, how will such a person do well in spiritual life? How is even meditation or prayer possible if there is no peace in our heart? And that kind of peace and that kind of control is necessary in order for a person to be established in the state of yoga. Because only through yoga we can, and you know what I mean by yoga, I don't mean the exercises, that's pretty clear by this time. Through this inner yoga as a spiritual discipline, through that discipline we can then attain to the highest. So one of the primary requirements is to be able to take the ups and downs in our stride. That's what these veteran fishermen do, or veteran sailors do. They don't get upset at every little storm that comes. Even some of the passengers on the ship or some other newcomers might be upset, and then the veterans say, just go and relax, it's all going to be okay. So that's how we have to be a veteran to sail the boat of our life onto this stormy seas. Verse 8. Jnana vijnana truptatma kutastho vijitendriyaha yukta ityucchate yogi samaloshtāshma kanchanaha. The yogi whose self is satisfied through knowledge and realization, who is steady and has the senses under control, and to whom a clod of earth, a stone, and gold are of equal value, is said to be steadfast. So when can we say that we are becoming steady in the path of yoga, in the path of spiritual life? These are the things that are necessary. First of all, the mind must be at rest, peaceful. And this can come through jnana and vijnana. So jnana is here means the study. Actually, what we are studying right now. So this is jnana, knowledge that comes through the study of texts or listening to lectures or discussion with friends. So this knowledge about spiritual life is jnana. Now, when you practice this and experience for yourself the truth of this, that becomes vijnana. That's what the first word in this verse says. Jnana, vijnana, tripta. Tripta means contented, satisfied. So when, for instance, we read here, we have read in the last two verses, that when, to the extent we are able to bring our body, mind, senses under control, we will experience peace and we will be able to handle the ups and downs of life in a mature way. Now that's knowledge, because that's what we have studied, and this seems to make sense. Now when we actually then go out, go home, or go and work, and while we are working, we consciously try to exert this control over the body and mind, keeping in mind that the body and mind are our instruments, that it's I who determines how to use these instruments. And the more control we gain over them, then we begin to actually experience, not just read about peace here, actually experience that peace in our heart. Now that would be vijnana. So that would be realization. So knowing about peace and actually realizing peace are two different things. Just like looking at the picture of a mango and actually eating a mango. Two different things. So when a yogi, tripta, satisfied, it's like this, when you had a really good meal, a delicious meal, then you say, now I'm satisfied. Exactly in the same way, when we study the Gita, try to live according to its teachings, and then experience the truth of what it says, then the mind becomes tripta, the mind becomes satisfied. To such a mind which is satisfied, it automatically becomes steady. Because what makes it unsteady is the lack of control. So when the mind becomes controlled, it acquires that steadiness. And through that steadiness, then we acquire the capacity to look deeply into things. And where we noticed difference before, now we notice that there is not really much different. In some sense, our value system undergoes a change. Read here, a clod of earth, a stone, and gold. Now, clearly, it would be wrong to say they are of equal value. Well, in this example, gold is definitely of greater value. Stone, if it's like precious stone especially, that would be more value than just a clod of earth. And yet, if I look deeply within them and then find, well, as far as an instance, as far as, say, realizing God is concerned, all of these three are of equally useless. And so, from certain standpoints, I might be able to see that which appears to have different value, but from another standpoint, they seem to be of same value, equally useless. We remember the instance in Sri Ramakrishna's life. You see, when we read things like this, and it makes sense. Now what Sri Ramakrishna did was, he had this very interesting feature in his life, that he was sometimes not just satisfied, just reading about it and say, okay, that makes sense. And so we read that he actually went to the Ganga with a stone in hand and some coins and said, there is no difference between the two, and just dropped them. Now that was not just some kind of a dramatic gesture, just to kind of, he didn't plan, they are going to write a biography of me afterwards and this might be an interesting incident in it. Of course, these calculations obviously were not there. This is not to say that we should lose all our sense of relative value in life. As you go about in day-to-day life, you will see things must be respected, things must be given the value they deserve. But there must be a space in our life when we can just take a step back and look at it and say, yes, at that relative plane, they may have different values. When I step back and see, there is not much difference. In one sense, you could, I mean, if you, well, for a scientist, for instance, a physicist or a chemist would say, sure, a clod of earth, a stone and gold, but deep down, they're just atoms and molecules. So even from a very material perspective, they're just a bunch of atoms and molecules. Yeah. So as I said, the value system can undergo change when you look deeply into things. So when that happens to such a person, then can be said to be in a state of yoga. Now, what these verses are doing are not just describing some yogi, because then say, well, what is that to us? We will look at it when we become yogi like that. No, the idea is this: everything that is mentioned here points to a discipline that we need to have in our life. So it is we who need to make an effort to reach that state of satisfaction through knowledge and experience. We should make an effort to become steady in our lives and have the senses under control and try to look deeply into things and objects and people around us so that we have a deeper knowledge, that we don't make judgments based on only superficial appearances. Verse number 9. Surun mitrar yudasina madhyasthadveshya bandhushu sadhushvapi cha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate. Here's another instance of how the value system can change. He excels who looks equally on a well-wisher, a friend, an enemy, a neutral, an arbiter, a hateful person, a relative, and also on the good and the sinful. Now clearly, these are very different kinds of people. And among our family, our friends, among the people we know, it's possible to classify them in these kind of categories. The more differences we see around us, the more complicated our life is going to be. If among those differences, in the midst of all that diversity, if I can see unity, then I'm on my way to being a yogi. For a spiritual seeker, for a Vedanta student, it should not be that difficult. Because if we believe that God dwells in my heart, then God doesn't just dwell only in my heart, He dwells in the heart of everyone. Now it's easy to feel the presence of God in the people we like and love. It's not so easy to see the presence of God in people whom it might not be so difficult to kind of grant, okay, even the people I don't know, there may be God in their heart. But people you know and you hate, or people whom you see as your arch enemy, to then believe there is God even in that person's heart, that really is very difficult. So what this points out is that God dwells in, now then we might, of course there are very logical, obvious questions for these things. Well, if God dwells in the heart of all, then why do some people do terrible things? Why do some people do wicked things? What do you think? What do you think? Yeah, Bob?
Unaware that God is there, unaware that they are divine.
Yeah.
They are unaware. They're unaware that God dwells with them. They're unaware that they're divine.
Well, even if they're unaware, but God is aware, right, in their heart. So, I mean, it's like this. If I'm in the rain and I'm unaware I'm in the rain, I'm going to get as much wet as someone who is aware, right? So what other reason can you give? Yeah.
Maybe because of past lives, they have some karma, or I guess samskara, I think is the word you've used, that is maybe coming to the surface and manifesting.
So it's obstructing the manifestation of God in the heart.
Sure.
So that's more powerful than God then.
It's all God in the end. So
Yeah. Okay. I think you're right. So what we can say, it's like this. It's like this same light. So if you have, say, electric bulbs of same power in, say, 10 different lamps, but the lamp shades you have of different, some are transparent, some are semi-transparent, some are very thick. And so the light emanating from those things are going to be different, not because the original light is different, but because the coverings are of different density. And so we can say that a person who is good, who is manifesting very good qualities, in such a person, the covering is less dense. In an enlightened person, it's completely transparent. So you are able to see that full shine within. So the more transparent the coverings become, the greater is the manifestation of the divine. And perhaps the people who do terrible things, it's just too thick a layer on top. But that doesn't mean God is not present. It's just that the layer is very thick. So that is it. If we are able to think this way, then we will be able to see on all these different people with an equal eye. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. Now, we might say, well, equal eye, does it mean that I have to treat them all equally? Not on the relative plane. Sri Ramakrishna gives this example. He says that, well, God is present even in lions and tigers. But you don't go and embrace a tiger because that God in the God who is in the tiger body, the tiger is just going to eat you up. Can't say, well, if there is God, why would God allow me to be eaten? But if God is in the tiger body, then the tiger is going to do what tigers do. And so, seeing them all equally does not mean being stupid. It means recognizing that on the plane on which we live and move, that there are going to be these differences. You can see, although we all accept equality as a value, everybody says we are all equal. Everyone says we are all equal, but if you just look around, there is really no equality in every way. Whether it's in terms of financial or the different positions that people hold, or in matters of health, wealth, everything. Nothing is equal. And yet, equality as an ideal, as a value to strive for, it resonates with our head and heart. So in what way are we equal then? Why is equality such a great value? At the level of body and mind, equality is really just not there. It would be great to have it, but just not there. And what Vedanta teachers say is that sense of equality, in fact, it's more than equality, it's more an identity, can be seen only at the level of the spirit. So the more I become aware of the deeper dimension within me, which is beyond the body and mind, and then I try to look at that deeper dimension in a person in front of me, then I'm better able to appreciate the value of sameness. That is what he said. If a person can see all of these equally in the Arati hymn that we sing every evening, that Khandana Bhava Bandhana, the hymn that Swami Vivekananda composed on Sri Ramakrishna, there is a verse which says, Premarpana Samadarashana. Samadarashana means exactly this, looking upon all equally. In other words, there is one category here called the hateful person. The Sanskrit word for that is dveshya. Now, if there is a hateful person, we might say, well, then I am justified in hating a hateful person. And what the Gita seems to tell us is that a person may have done things which are hate-worthy, so to speak, something that deserves hatred. Even in the face of that, if I refuse to hate that person, again, that doesn't mean just go and embrace that person like embracing a lion or tiger. But if I can keep these negative emotions out of my heart, then I'm in a better position to know how I should deal with that person. Because all of these negative or positive, strong reactions to people around us cloud our judgment. Often we say or do the wrong thing because we are not able to keep our peace. And we are not able to keep our peace because we have strong ideas about, oh, this person is bad, that is good, that's terrible, this person is horrible. So I'm already kind of become too judgmental. If I'm too strongly judgmental, then it sounds a little paradoxical. The more judgmental I am, the more my judgment gets clouded. The more I'm able to step back and look deeply, I'm able to then judge more accurately. I'm then able to know what I should do, what I should not do, what I should say, what I should not say. I will then know not only how to protect myself if that person is a dangerous person, how to protect myself from that person, but also I might find a way by which I might be able to protect other people from that person. Going a step further, I might be able to find a way to even help that person not be so dangerous in future. Because one way is, which is unfortunately the way that seems easiest and being increasingly followed, is that, well, if someone is a criminal, well, lock them up. And that's how the prison system is getting bigger and bigger. And it seems to make things easy and quick. A much longer way would be to look deeply and say, why do people turn to crime? Is there some way we can find by which the factors or circumstances which drive people towards criminal activity may be changed some way? So it's not something that the problem is going to solve totally, but we might be able to find a way in reduced crime by trying to change the situation rather than just dumping people behind bars. And this is not I'm not saying anything original. This has already been attempted in many parts of the world and has shown very positive results. Now that's something that governments and administrations might do. But even at the individual level, we need to find a way to help as much as possible. Clearly, our capacity to help others is limited. And so we need to recognize our limitations. We need to recognize what's possible for us to do, what's not possible for us to do. But if you find that it is possible to help in some way, then we should not hesitate to do so. That's the idea. But that, how much ability I have to help, when I should help, how I should do so, all of these things will become possible, first of all, if I have myself under control, my body and mind under control, that I am at peace and I am able to look deeply and not get upset or excited by these inevitable ups and downs that occur in every life. Verse number 10. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthitaha ekaki yata chittatma nirashira parigraha. The yogi with his mind and body, mind and self, that is body, subjugated, free from desire, destitute and living alone in solitude, should constantly concentrate his mind. So again, this is what if we want to be yogis, this is what we should do. The body and mind subjugated, meaning under control, free from desire. The word here is Sanskrit, in nirashihi. I think better translated as free from hope. It's hope that that kind of takes away our peace of mind. Better than hope, I would say a better word would be expectation. Free from expectation. So we need to, that would be I think a better translation. Instead of free from desire, free from expectation. That we need to carry out our duties, our responsibilities, and then if I do what is done, what needs to be done, then the results will come if they are to come. So my expecting it only is pretty, as I have said on earlier occasion, it's pretty useless activity. Whether I'm expecting or not, if it's going to get cold tonight, it's going to get cold. Whether I expect it or not makes no difference to it. And so free from expectation, I would also like to change the word destitute. It has several meanings. What is meant here is free from possession. The Sanskrit in the verse is aparigraha. Aparigraha means free from possession. Now, free from possession, what does it mean? Jesus says, sell all that thou hast and follow me. Now, Francis of Assisi took that very literally. If you want to follow Jesus, sell everything thou hast. And he showed how that kind of single-minded following, accepting the teaching and following could transform a life. So free from possession doesn't necessarily, everyone didn't do it, everyone really don't even have to do it. It's not the possession themselves that are a problem. It's the sense of, it's the, well, let me put it this way. It's not the possession that's problematic, it's the possessor within that's problematic. So I can have this, I can use it, but not feel that I own it. So this kind of an inbuilt tendency in the human heart to become the owners. I own. And we don't simply own objects, we own people, which makes it worse. So this is mine. And that is really at the root of most problems in life, the sense of ownership. Think about it this way. When we, and this is again known to all of us, but we don't often think about it. When we came to this world, when we were born, we came with nothing. We just came with our body, our mind, and our own samskaras. That's it. That was all the possession we had. When we leave the world, that's the only thing we will leave with. The body, well, the body also we can't carry with us. It is going to be left here. Well, the mind and the samskaras. Now, it's this period in between, after birth and before death. how many things accumulate around us, and we begin to see, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. So it's giving up that sense of mine. That is what is necessary for a yogi. And for devotees of God, it's helpful to look upon oneself as not an owner, but as a trustee. So your family can say, these are the people, these wonderful people have been entrusted by God in my care. Or the business that you have, or the work that you do, or the things that you have, whether it's your car, your computer, your home. Look up, a devotee will say, it's through grace of God that these things have been given. They belong to God because they have come through God, come from God, and God can take them away whenever God wants, because they didn't belong. I didn't belong to me in the first place, so I cannot lay any claim to them. But I love God, and God has given me all these things, and they belong to God, so I'm going to take good care of them. You know, if there's someone you love and that person says, oh, I'm going out for a few days, could you please take care of my dog? Let's say. And then if you love that person, as they say, love me, love my dog. So if you love that person, then you will take good care of that dog because you love that person. Now, a devotee who loves God and sees that everything that I have, not just my material possessions, not just the people around me, even my talents, my knowledge, everything that I have within me and outside me has come through God's grace. Everything belongs to God. All the faculties of our mind belong to God. There's one drop of chemical in the brain and all the faculties might disappear. They came through God and they can go away with God. That's how a devotee will see. And that's one way to then try to eliminate the sense of ownership, that I am a trustee. God has entrusted me with these things, and I'm going to take good care of them. So we love our friends, our family, love your work hard, do everything, but deep down know that they all belongs to God. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of a maid servant who goes and works in a rich family, and she raises their children. The babysitter, she raises the children and looks upon them just as a mother would love them. She loves them, but deep down in her heart, she knows these are not really my children. I'm only an employee here. My children are back in the village. Exactly in the same way, a spiritual seeker sees, this is not my real home. My real home is with God. But I'm here now, God has sent me here, and God has given me these things to take care of, and I'm going to take good care of them. That's the idea. So when a person is able to do it and does all this, keeping the body and mind under control, living free from expectation, free from the idea of possession, idea of ownership, and living alone in solitude. Now, alone, the word alone is important. Alone and lonely are two different things. Now, being lonely is really, it's very painful. It's very bad. People suffer through loneliness. But being alone, knowing that we are alone, is actually necessary in spiritual life. That even with all the support systems around us, at some level we are all alone. That is why they say the most that anybody can accompany you up to is to the cremation ground or the burial ground. The journey beyond that, we all have to do alone. We come into this world alone, we leave the world alone. Now, this is not meant to kind of bring some kind of a sadness in our heart. well, whether it makes us sad or not, that's the reality anyway. But it's to recognize that at one level, we are alone. Now, as a devotee of God, we'll never feel alone because there is always, God is always present. Some of my other supports in the world, sometimes they may be near me, sometimes they may not be near me, sometimes they may be taken away from me. But the only thing that will not be taken away from me is God. Or to a student of Vedanta who wants to look at it from the perspective of the Atman, it's my own Atman. The Atman, the spirit, no one can take it away. Other than that, everything can be taken away. What is death? Other than the body is taken away, but that's death. Everything else will go. The only thing that will remain is God or the Atman. So a yogi recognizes that. And if we want to be yogis, we need to recognize that. It might seem as if thinking that we are alone will take all joy out of life. Actually, no. It may make us thoughtful for a while. It'll make us thoughtful for a while. But once we recognize that at that deep level, I'm alone, and then remember that all the supports that I have around me, all of those things have come through the God's grace. And I'm going to take good care of everything that is around me. Things, people, my family, friends, everyone. I'm going to love them, I'm going to take care of them, and recognize that's all through God's grace they have come. That is the way to become a yogi. So we'll stop here today. If you have any comments, questions? Yes.
So, Swamiji, I think you already touched on this, but just for the sake of discussion, we've used the words discipline, control, slave master, and subjugation. So if we had to think of that as one category of words, and then on the other, words like spontaneous, effortless, playful, gentleness, lightness, freedom, exuberance, and joy. Sometimes in listening, I feel like there's an overemphasis on this kind of strenuous, forced control. And so I think, I guess the question, maybe that's part of the translation in English as opposed to what it originally means in Sanskrit. But in listening to this, I guess the question is, how do we do the inner work of yoga without becoming, for lack of a better word, strained, workaholic control freaks?
Yes, good question. I think it's not, I think it's like this. In the beginning, we will need discipline. And that discipline is going to affect our spontaneity. No doubt about it. It's going to affect my freedom. For instance, now, if let's say, even at the physical level, if the doctor has said that, well, there's too much sugar, you need to control the amount of sugar you take. Now, well, that's going to need discipline. That's not, I can't be then spontaneous. Wow, I feel like drinking some sweet drink today. And so my spontaneity is affected because that's what I would like to do. My freedom is affected. But then I have to then use that discipline. Now, once that discipline becomes a part of my being, then once I know that I won't do anything against my self-interest, then I don't need to follow discipline. And the story sometimes told is about the Buddha, that he used to follow. There's a lot of rules in the Buddhist tradition. So Buddha, years later, even when he was very old and the monastery had grown, there were hundreds of monks, and he used to follow all those rules meticulously, everything. And so some of his disciples went to him and said, "Oh, enlightened one, these rules are meant for these novices. You don't have to follow them, you are already enlightened. And that time Buddha smiled and then he said, when I was young, I followed all these rules very meticulously. Now I don't follow them. Now these rules follow me. So Buddha was being very spontaneous and free, but because he had disciplined himself before, he knew that he wouldn't take any wrong step. And so that's how we need to see. A discipline comes first, and once we have established in that discipline, then freedom and spontaneity will automatically follow. Is that okay?
Swamiji, I have a question. This discipline as in conjunction with the samskara. In other words, we come with certain baggage.
Samskara.
Yes. Is there a conflict in how I overcome the baggage with which I was born? In other words, I may try, but I am also forced against whatever thing I have to go through.
No, the samskaras can be changed. The baggage that we come with, I mean, there are two things really involved here. One is the karma phala, the joy and sorrow, the sukha dukkha that we are going to experience. There is nothing much you can do about it. That sukha dukkha is going to come. Joy and sorrow we are all going to experience. The other baggage, what you call baggage, would be the mental impression, the samskara that we are born with. Now that is not a fixed entity. The samskara's bag, if you think, it's a very dynamic collection, because every action that I am doing now is adding stuff to that. And so if I now with my discipline try to think good thoughts, speak good words, do good actions, then I am increasing my good samskaras. So really I can change the composition of my samskaras. And so it's not fixed. So that doesn't control me. Anything else? Okay, so we will stop here today, and next week we can resume on verse number 11. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. On Sunday, we will have Antar Yoga as usual. There will be music, readings, prayer, meditations. You are welcome for the Sunday program at 11. Next Wednesday, we will continue with the study of the Gita. And our Tuesday and Saturday, Aarti and meditation will also continue as usual. We'll conclude with a prayer now. So the prayer is on page 3 of your books. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.